Welcome everybody to the next Savvy Investor YouTube Live. We got another great training session, and it's the beginning of the year 2024, and we're kicking it off with a bang. For those that don't necessarily know who I am, I'm Mike Pawnee. I'm the founder of Savvy Investor and longtime Canadian real estate investor. Oh man, we got an amazing training session ahead of us, specifically for those that are interested in hearing about one of the hottest markets, real estate investing markets in the country. Just in the comments, let me see if you guys can guess which market it is. So let's take a guess. And believe it or not, it's not BC. It's not Ontario. We're talking about good old Alberta. Yeehaw! So post in the chat if you are currently or considering investing in this market. I should be seeing a lot of me's on the chat because you're here. You're actually attending the training session to learn about it. So, for myself, Alberta has been a real interesting market, to say it lightly. I've been investing in it for roughly around 20 years. And trust me when I say it's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride. And for those who don't see those gray hairs beside me here and the side of my head, yeah, that's Alberta, to be very honest with you. But at the same time, we're seeing some really great times in Alberta. And some of it's not so much, for Alberta itself, we've ridden out 3 major recessions in the last 12 years, not 20, 12. Those are really great times. And, I can see James and Andrea smiling there because they've seen it, right? They don't have as many gray hairs as I do, but trust me, it's been really crazy. So, but it has been very interesting as of late, as many markets across the country are struggling with higher interest rate with hikes, affordability issues. We aren't seeing kind of the same things in Alberta. We're seeing a little bit of resilience that's actually happening here. So that is actually the discussion today. Is Alberta finally having its day in the sun? And is this a good time to be investing there? Yes or no? So that's going to be kind of the $1 million question that we'll be asking. So with that being said, I have brought in some of the big guns, okay? We brought some of the big kahunas, and we brought in some of the experts to share with our savvy investors so we all learn more about this amazing market, okay? So I'm very, very honored to bring not just one, but 2 real estate industry experts to the show. And so I'm going to be welcoming Andrea Tessier, I said it right, I think, Andrea, and at the same time, James Knull from Mogul Realty, to share some of their wisdom with all of us, of course. And these 2 are absolutely no strangers to our investing community and have an extensive amount of knowledge in their respective markets, working mostly with real estate investors. And believe it or not, because they've invested in Alberta, they've been working with their investors in Alberta and have been in the industry for a long time, and they've got the bruises to prove it as well. So I couldn't think of anybody better to have as part of our YouTube Live today than these 2 wonderful individuals, as they are active investors, feet on the street, and they are also great realtors as well. So before we kind of get started, I just want to make sure that everybody, before we get started, I just want to highlight that this is a YouTube Live, and this YouTube Live is actually brought to you by our good friends and trusted partners, Bar LLP. They are the right legal team for real estate investors for Western Canada, and Bar LLP is a full-service law firm based in Edmonton. They have an amazing experience with real estate, both in residential and commercial. They focus on institutional and private lending as well. So Bar LLP is actually licensed in Alberta, has extensive experience working with agents in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Now, they've also provided a little special gift for our savvy investors, for those that need some reviewing of contracts or financing commitments or any of those wonderful things. They are doing this at no cost for you guys. What a nice little treat that they're offering for everybody. So with that being said, if you are looking for some support, go to the description below, click on their link. If you're looking for a great real estate investor lawyer to help support you with your transactions. Bar LLP is one of my lawyers that I use specifically for our Western Canada investment. So with that being said, just to wrap things up as well, before we introduce our members, this is our Savvy Investor YouTube channel. This is a live. I can see you guys chatting and talking. So ask your questions. This is here for you guys to get your questions answered. So if you haven't done so already, please do me a small little favor. Hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell to keep you informed of our upcoming videos that we've got planned for you guys for an amazing 2024. So without further ado, let's welcome our special guests, Andrea and James, to the stage. Welcome, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Terrific. Thank you
so much, guys. Yeah, it's great to have you guys, and hopefully you guys had a wonderful holiday break, and you guys are ready to get back to work again right away. So how are things been going for you guys for the most part? You guys had a great holiday?
Yeah, it was busy. Things have stayed busy. It was definitely an interesting year in that sense. So
Good. And James, how about yourself?
Yeah, you know what? I like to use the holidays to do strategic planning. So a lot of planning, a lot of reviewing, and as far as we're concerned, it's already week 2, so we hit the ground running. It's going to be exciting to talk Alberta because just anecdotally, we have trended at 1 transaction per day since the first.
Wow.
So hopefully that continues, and it looks looking like it will. So while Alberta's getting cold, the market's already quite hot, which is going to be exciting to talk about today.
Awesome. So good. And I'm agreeing with you. So maybe before we kind of get started, ladies first, of course, maybe you guys could introduce yourself. For those that are kind of watching, we got people all over Canada. We've got people that are in the States, and they're all like Alberta, Calgary, Edmonton. So maybe you can kind of highlight who you are, what you do, share a little bit about your story, and where as a realtor you guys are focused on. So Andrea, I'll start with you first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Andrea Tessier. I'm with Phipps Real Estate Group here at CIR Realty in Calgary. We are an investor-focused team, so there are 6 of us on the team, and we also offer in-house property management. So we do residential, commercial, and property management as a whole on the team. And my journey kind of started out as an investor myself. So working on personal projects and investments and renovations, and that's what led me to want to get licensed and enter the industry to help support others who are passionate about the same thing.
Love it. Awesome. Great. Thanks, Andrew. And great to have you here. James, next.
Very similar introduction into the real estate career. I started as an investor first before I got into being a licensed realtor. After about a dozen transactions, I thought, this is so fun, I might as well become a realtor. That was about 20 years ago in Alberta, actually. And so a lot of those ups and downs and waves that Mike has been talking about, I've had a chance to ride them along with him. And, fast forward to today, we service investors all over Canada to invest in, we have a headquarters in Edmonton and a headquarters in Vancouver. And you know what? We just love talking about real estate investing, and that's the majority of our client list. So it's going to be a great conversation today, having representation from the 2 major cities in our awesome province.
I agree, 100%. One of the reasons why we brought both of them in. So for those that are interested, Calgary and Edmonton, you can't ask for better realtors than the individuals that are joining us today. Ask your questions. This is for you guys. So let's do this and have a little bit of fun. Let's have a little history lesson. I don't know, Andrea, you might be a little bit young to remember this, but as an investor, it's probably not that long ago. So as I shared with everybody, this is their first real estate cycle in BC and Ontario. They're just like, wait a minute, real estate prices don't go up 15, 20% per year. What's going on? This is really strange what's happening right now. In Alberta, it's like, oh yeah, just another roller coaster. There's just another little blip. And believe it or not, what we're dealing with right now is nothing. In fact, it's kind of a nice little bit of a treat, which is interesting. But we have had major recessions in Alberta. So maybe just to have a little bit of fun, Alberta was kind of the ugly cousin of the country when it came to real estate prices, where everybody was going up except Alberta. So is there anything based on history that has resonated with you? Maybe you can share a little bit about some of the challenges, because again, for a lot of people, this is their first kind of down market. So maybe you can highlight some of the challenges that maybe you personally incurred and what maybe happened in Alberta that created an impact. So I don't know if anybody wants to start off. I don't know if anybody's got anything that resonates with them.
Yeah, I guess I started my career right as the first peak in 2007-8 was happening. So I actually got my real estate license in 2009, and very similar market to what we just experienced, where it was tough to put a deal together. Buyers were really apprehensive. Yeah. Sellers didn't want to take price reductions. So what we're dealing with right now, there's a lot of lessons from 2007 and then again around that 14-15 time period. The thing about Alberta is between 14-15 and now, it's been a pretty static market until very recently. So if there's something that I think we really focus on in Alberta that might not be a feature of some of the major centers like Vancouver and Toronto, is that we really, really lean into that cash flow and treat investing from a perspective of business fundamentals. Okay. Whereas, we always make the joke in Edmonton, we call it Vancouver style investing, where you're so confident that the market is going to appreciate that if you're going to make $200,000 or $300,000 in equity gain in 5 years, $1,000 a month in negative cash flow times 60 months, well, you're spending 60 to make 300. There's actually a value proposition there, which can make sense in your Torontos and your Vancouvers. In Edmonton and in Alberta, we really want to make sure that the rent is going to cover the expenses. And so it's more treating it like a business than just a speculative investment.
Yeah, I absolutely
Awesome stuff.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrea. I'll let you share your 2 bits. Like I said, I'm sure that a lot of that stuff resonates with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really agree, James. Cash flow is important for sure. And it, for many years when the markets in Ontario and BC were seeing such drastic passive appreciation, we didn't see that. So, it was really a different strategy. And now I think it's really quite interesting seeing some of those other markets and investors coming from those areas who maybe bought pre-construction and were counting on that passive appreciation, and now things are changing. And that really hasn't been the strategy here in Alberta. So I think just being creative, but cash flow is a big part of it for sure.
Yeah, and I think both advices, I agree with you. And for myself, when investing in Alberta, I don't know about you guys, but that was our saving grace, was cash flow. It's like, thanks that the property was generating cash flow, we were able to ride the ebbs and flows that was going on in the market with all these challenging times. So let's put that stuff in the past. Let's forget about all that stuff. Let's talk about today. So maybe what are we seeing in the market right now? Because I think this is an interest for a lot of people, is they want to know what's happening in both Calgary and Edmonton. So, Andrea, I'll start with you, because Calgary is, I'm not going to spill the beans, but I'll let you start with that if you don't mind. So what's happening in Calgary, and what are you seeing in the real estate market?
Yeah, so Calgary really has remained resilient over the past year or so since interest rates have increased, which has been really exciting to see. We've seen consecutive gains in our benchmark prices month over month in 2022, and we're expecting that trend to continue. And really a big part of it is the demand. So we're continuing to see a lot of people moving to Alberta in general, and particularly Calgary, from other provinces and other countries. So that demand and the inventory are just not meeting up together. So it's causing prices to continue to increase. Yeah.
Love it. And maybe are you seeing that both in residential and in the commercial space? Because you're both in commercial as well as single family homes. I know you both are, to be honest, but I should clarify that. So both of them are in multifamily, commercial, as well as single family homes. So are you seeing the same trend there? Yeah. Yeah,
our team focuses on it all. So absolutely. We're seeing it in single family, multifamily as well.
Love it. James, how about you, sir?
Yeah, I'm going to build on some of those great comments Andrea made, because the affordability index across Canada wasn't so bad when the interest rate was low, but now that the interest rates have been quickly increasing, it's really tough to afford to live in some of the bigger cities for a lot of people and a lot of new Canadians. So we've kind of got 2 types of migration happening to the province. We've got Canadians trying to seek affordability. We've also got new Canadians looking for the most affordable place in Canada to live, and that's Alberta. So it's just like Andrea said, it's simple to supply and demand economics. We're seeing the leading indicator of rents start to go up, because usually when people move to a market for the first time, they're going to rent for a little bit before they buy. So that rental demand has been driving our rents. And if you look at the stats, we've seen our rents really go up in both cities. So what is starting to happen in Edmonton and what's happened in Calgary first is prices now following that leading measure. The thing about Edmonton is that we're in Calgary's orbit. So to use a couple of examples that a lot of Canadians are going to recognize, well, Vancouver went crazy, and then Sunshine Coast, Victoria, Kelowna, down into the Fraser Valley, these prices then followed. Or we're looking at Toronto. Toronto's driving, and now Hamilton is following behind. So we've really watched Calgary drive that market, and now Edmonton, being in that periphery of Calgary, is starting to drive along with it. So it's kind of neat, because Edmonton and Calgary are 2 of the biggest cities in the country, but we're not the main urban centers that people think about when they think Canada. So when the affordability index flops like it has right now, well, people are going to flock to the province, and these are the 2 cities they want to be in.
Yep. Love it. Very good. Great information. And bingo, like I think everything you're saying is making a lot of sense. Let me ask you just kind of sub question to that. How long have you noticed this influx or higher demand in both of those markets? 6 months, a year? How long have you seen this change or this transition in both of your guys' markets? What would you say?
In the Calgary market, I'd say it's been over the past 18 to 24 months. In Q1 of 2022, the migration into Alberta was, I think, up over 200%, like a huge number. And that continued throughout the past year. So for Calgary in particular, it's been, we're kind of still at the height of it, but within the past 2 years.
Yeah, with Edmonton, we've watched the rental demand increase, and in core neighborhoods and key neighborhoods and the most popular neighborhoods, that's where prices have started moving first. And now this year, moving into spring 2024, all the neighborhoods are starting to move. So I think that echo of what just happened in Calgary last spring is going to start really being noticeable in Edmonton. So we're seeing the prices move, and we're kind of using Calgary as our crystal ball in Edmonton right now.
Love it. And just for everybody's knowledge, just when it comes to the migration trends, it's kind of difficult to see what those numbers are. So I've actually put something together for everybody so you guys can quickly see the type of migration that's actually happening from province to province, and it's the migrants out and migrants in. But obviously, when you look at all the different provinces across the country, you can obviously see that Alberta is really doing some amazing things in regards to growth. And we're going to talk about affordability here shortly. But other than, Alberta's always kind of been known for like oil, obviously, right? And if you guys remember the good old days, if oil prices were going up, there's all this demand and everything. Have you guys noticed kind of a little bit of a change economically wise for Alberta? And what's kind of driving it now? Is it just affordability? Because again, we're seeing that significant migration happening. Is it still oil? What are you guys hearing and seeing from people that are actually moving into the province?
Yeah, there's a lot of diversification that's happening in Alberta. And like you said, Michael, I think, of course, still oil is a big part of our economy, but it's not the only driving factor. We've been seeing a lot of innovation in the aerospace, engineering, and innovation in that kind of area, as well as in agribusiness. I think a lot of people don't know that Alberta is actually one of the third largest exporters of agribusiness products. As well as life sciences and healthcare. We're seeing a lot more of that and people moving for our healthcare industry as well. In Calgary, we have the cancer center that's going to be open to the public this year. And that was a huge project that's also drawing people for jobs, but then for the economy also.
I love it. James, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to take Andrea's word and expand on it for the Edmonton market, which is diversification of the economy. So, historically, Calgary is more of the administrative hub and leadership hub of the energy sector. So you'll see a lot of these energy companies, oil companies, have their headquarters in Calgary. Edmonton has traditionally been the manufacturing hub. I think there was a bit, and there still is maybe a misconception that it's all about taking the oil out of the ground and refining it. That happens in Edmonton. The biggest refineries are built in and around Edmonton, but manufacturing is also a huge part of that too. Building oil rigs, building oil pumps, building oil pipes, all the stuff that's needed to make this energy flow, that's all getting manufactured in two major manufacturing parks, one called Nisku, one called Atchison, close to Edmonton. When the last oil recession happened, when oil prices really tanked in 2015, a lot of the leadership and a lot of the ownership of these manufacturing facilities in Edmonton, they weren't just going to take it lying down. And so we repurposed a lot of our infrastructure towards other industries. So, for example, agribusiness. There is a lot of green tech, like vertical farming going on in Nisku right now. Or, it's not a sexy industry, but one of the biggest pet food manufacturing facilities in North America opened outside of Edmonton during the last oil recession. So a lot of this factory space, a lot of this manufacturing space has been getting repurposed, which is moving Alberta away from just oil dependence. And it's creating more jobs that are a little more insulated from just that energy economy. Edmonton also has the added bonus of being the government center, and it has the largest university in the province. And so there's a lot of those economy resistant jobs because government employees are going to be employed no matter what's going on. and then students are going to get taught by instructors no matter what's going on. You know, the University of Alberta has about 50,000 students and about 30,000 support staff. That's like 8% of Edmonton's population at any given point in time is just dealing with universities. So that creates a bit more stability, and the diversification in the economy that Andrea spoke to, I think is really going to be a key element to what's going to happen over the province over the next 15 to 20 years.
I agree. And I think even for those that have been in the industry for a long time, especially in Alberta, the province has done a really great job doing exactly that, as diversifying, because again, they came to the realization quickly that oil can't be the only thing. It had to have some variations to it, and they've done a significant job. So again, it isn't the same as what it was before. It's changed a lot. Like, there's a lot of diversification. It isn't so oil dependent, but at the same time, oil is still a big driver, but it isn't as crucial as it once was before. So with that being said, I'm going to ask you guys a question. With people moving in, you guys are getting the phone calls. People that are moving in to live there, can you maybe share about what are they saying? What type of communication are you getting from buyers that are moving there? They're like, I'm coming to Alberta from, to be honest, a lot of it's from Ontario, and you can tell me otherwise. It's Ontario and BC. Those are both big markets that are coming in there. What are the types of calls you're getting? Because I think this is important for people to hear why they're moving to Alberta. Anybody want to chime in?
Yeah, if you don't mind me going first on this one, Andrea. The reason I'm smiling is I was literally on that phone call and was getting a text from Mike saying, "Hurry up, we're starting in just a minute." So I was actually on that exact phone call right before this. And lovely family from Abbotsford, British Columbia. So there's a lot from Ontario. This happened to be a BC migrant. And we're talking about price point. We're talking about affordability. And they're telling me that they've been shopping for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo for their family in Abbotsford, and their budget's about $500,000 to $600,000. And when I told them that price point would get them a 4-bedroom, 3.5-bathroom, 3-story house with attached garage in a safe neighborhood with a backyard, close to amenities and schools, it did not compute. They thought I was joking. So that's what those conversations are looking like. Is I think across the country, people are hearing how affordable it is here. But when you put it into those real terms of what your dollar will get you, people are just saying, you know what? I can deal with a couple of months of cold if it means that much of a lifestyle upgrade for my family.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to build off of that, James, same thing. I mean, we're having calls with people every day that are looking to move to the province because of the affordability. You know, clients moving from Toronto, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, who can now afford a detached property in Calgary or surrounding areas. And it is, of course, the affordability, but it's also the lifestyle. I think, you know, Calgary only being about 45 minutes away from the mountains, more and more people being able to have flexibility with their jobs, or even working remotely and then wanting that flexibility to be able to go out to the mountains. And then again, with the diversification of the economy, more and more jobs. I was speaking about aviation. I've dealt with a lot of pilots recently, actually, because Calgary has our international airport. We have 2 of the major Canadian airlines that are based out of YYC. So lots of new job opportunities for people as well.
Yeah, love it. It's actually kind of funny. I was in Calgary late last year, brought my wife out. We were at an event that I was speaking at, and we thought we'd poke around, take a look at some of the neighborhoods and stuff like that, you know, just looking at real estate. And my wife's like, look what you can buy for $1 million in Calgary. And you're like, it's just like crazy compared to what you're seeing somewhere else, right? So absolutely, I think affordability is the biggest driver more than anything. And when people start comparing, it is kind of like a no-brainer, exactly like James has said. So that's kind of the individuals that are moving to the city. I want to hear also from investors. I would imagine you guys are getting calls from investors, maybe 1 or 2, I would assume. I'm just guessing. But what are you hearing from investors? Why are they looking at Alberta? What are you hearing? So, and I guess what's their first, I guess, fear, concern, excitement? What are you hearing from investors that are calling you? And are you getting calls from all over the country? It'd be very interesting to hear too. Andrew, I'll start with you on this one.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. A ton of investors from Ontario and BC. I'd say those are definitely the 2 biggest ones. I think the number one concern is still that misconception, like we were speaking about previously, that Alberta is just solely oil and gas driven, and that there isn't that diversification happening. So we've been having a lot of conversations about all the new industry that is coming in. But again, price point is appealing for a lot of investors in terms of that affordability piece. And in Calgary and Alberta in general, I think with a conservative government, Alberta is very open for business. So I think that's really exciting for a lot of investors, as well as our landlord-friendly policies, no HST, no land transfer tax. There's a lot of things that are very appealing for investors.
Where do I sign? Go ahead, James. Thanks, Andrea.
In addition to what Andrea said, I think one of the factors that we're observing from especially, the BC Toronto crowd, is that you have more opportunity to utilize commercial financing and investing just because of the price points. Yeah. If you want to buy a 5-plex in Vancouver or Toronto, that's out of reach for a lot of people. You're not investing in a $5 to $8 million building to achieve something like that. Whereas, in Edmonton, for example, you can get an 8-plex for well under $2 million, and that'll allow you to get commercial financing. Now, I know we're here to talk about the Alberta economy and not do a lecture on commercial financing, but there's a lot of advantages to building a portfolio with commercial financing that's appealing to a lot of investors, because the qualification process is different than residential financing. It allows you to acquire more assets with a different qualification. So I know Mike talks a lot about that in some of his other YouTube videos. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can check them out. And but being able to utilize that commercial financing at a price point that a lot of investors have the equity to get in practical terms, you could refinance an investment property you have in Vancouver and take that capital, put it into a property in Edmonton, use commercial financing, and still be more or less breaking even. Like, that's what we're talking about. And that's why, investors, even with a bit of experience, are really taking a hard look at Alberta, just because of the different strategies and financing options that are available that you just can't use affordably in the Vancouver or Toronto marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. And I think some of the things that you guys have highlighted too is, you're seeing this migration trend that's occurring. And when it comes to the rental market, I'm assuming you guys are also seeing some pretty high rent increases as well. As a matter of fact, I actually pulled a document for everybody to kind of see. But when you start to kind of look at some of the numbers on a provincial basis, and we start to break it down on a regional basis, Alberta's shining like you would not believe. And here's the best part, as Andrea has highlighted. There's not a lot of provincial caps like we see with some of the different rental agencies across the country. Well, Alberta, it's kind of, as we joke around, the Wild West. But honestly, it's a wonderful thing. And so my question to you guys is, are you seeing things like this maybe within your own portfolio, your client's portfolio? What are you guys seeing for rent increases in markets? And obviously, this is something that is kind of interesting, especially when you're in the multifamily space when it comes to net operating income, right? So,
yeah. Well, because there's no cap on rental increases in Alberta, I mean, the market really drives what the increases can be. So I know on our personal properties, we have done increases within the past year or two for sure, because it makes sense. And there is a lot of that demand. A lot of people are moving here, but like you said previously as well, need to rent for a little while before they're looking to buy in the market or purchase in the market. So within demand as well, like you put up an ad and you're getting tons of interest in the listing. So
the nice thing about the rents being the word I like to use is deregulated, which just means there's no cap or there's no limit on what you can increase the rents by. It's completely dependent on the market forces. So if the market says that rents went up by $100, you're allowed to increase the rent by $100. If the rents the benefit to that is, if you're purchasing an already tenanted property, then you're not restricted by a percentage increase of a couple of percent to increase those rents. The tenants can stay, great tenants will remain in place while you can still bring your rents up to market. So as an owner who already owns property, or for investors who've owned for 1 or 2 years, you don't have to move tenants in and out in order to keep your rents at market. And that, the tenants actually really like that, because now they can stay and they're happy to pay market rate, because if they move, they'd have to pay market rate anyways. So obviously there's a philosophical debate there, but the reality of the execution of that is it's very easy to simultaneously keep your rents right at the top of market and not have to lose good tenants to turnover in order to do that, which is a huge benefit in Alberta that, we definitely don't see that in Ontario or British Columbia.
No. And I think that's the big thing. When you get a chance to see kind of a free working ecosystem in regards to rent, trust me, we've had to drop rents. We've had to do little incentives. I'm sure you guys can both agree. We've had those challenging times. And so now we're seeing kind of a little bit of a difference. Really quickly, from a vacancy perspective, vacancies high or low in your guys' market? What are you seeing for vacancies for rentals in both your markets? Anybody want to take this?
Yeah, in Calgary, vacancy levels are quite low. A little bit higher in the downtown core, but in the suburbs, around 2%.
Yeah, and I'll just use a different metric to give a broader answer to that question. Like, we've seen lease up periods go from like 60 to 90 days down to about 15 to 30 days. So you're not going to sit vacant for more than a month in pretty much any property in the city at this point.
No. And the one thing I'm noticing too is the demand for rentals has gone through the roof. Like, it's amazing seeing kind of one listing for one of your properties, or one of my properties, I should say. It's just bananas, the amount of activity that's happening. And even this last December, we had a vacancy. I've never seen so much activity on a vacancy in December like I've seen in this last month. So it's been pretty interesting. So we were kind of touching a little bit about this, is this whole boom bust reputation. So Andrew, I think you brought this to the forefront. And for a lot of people, this is like, this is what the people think about Alberta. It's like boom bust, we don't know. And a lot of people, I don't know if you guys heard the terminology, it used to drive me crazy. I only invest in real estate markets that appreciate. And it's just like, come on, like real estate is a very cyclical business. And that's why they've avoided kind of Alberta, because it just didn't see the same type of appreciation that it once had before. So what do you say to kind of people like that in regards to the reputation of Alberta boom bust? And are you seeing things maybe be a little bit different this time around in this maybe uptick that we're seeing in Alberta?
I'll jump in on that one. For that type of investor is a speculator. The business of real estate is, income minus expense equals profit. It's the same way for a factory. It's the same way for a restaurant. It's the same way for a marketing agency. That's the cash flow of real estate. So investing on the market going up is what we call speculation. And for speculative investors, well, market timing matters. So to that person, I'd say, if you are speculating on market growth, then you need to look at the factors that drive market growth. And for the last few years, we haven't really been seeing those factors in Alberta. But, if you want to see a market increase, one of the simplest laws of economics are supply and demand. Well, there's a heck of a lot of people. There's not as much housing supply. Demand is spiking. And we're seeing all measurables of real estate values increasing. So to the speculators, I say, if you're the person that will only wait for a market that's appreciating, well, here we are.
Yep, love it. Andrew, how about you?
Yeah, that's great, James. Again, I really agree. And I think a lot of time when speaking with investors, the question is, okay, well, the market is going up in Alberta, is it at that peak already, or what is that going to look like? But I think there is a lot of room for price growth still, some healthy price growth. It's so hard to compare to some of the other markets, like in Ontario and BC, where there's just been this massive price growth and appreciation. And of course, again, we didn't necessarily see that, but now is Alberta's time, and we're starting to see more diversification again, which is helping with that. So to move us a little bit away from that boom bust, but I absolutely agree with what James is saying too, that, it can't just be based on speculation. And I think there's different strategies too that work with different markets and different market conditions. So it's important to look at what those strategies are and what makes sense.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you too. For me, during the recessionary times or the challenges, cash flow was our saving grace, period. That's it. We had a downturn, and at the same time we saw prices go down, but it was always cash flowing. So it was not a really big concern. And I'm still a believer, even with these high interest rates, that cash flow is still king, to be very, very honest with you. And this is kind of coming to the next part of the question. Are you guys still seeing cash flow in your real estate markets? We keep talking about these interest rates going up. But at the same time in Alberta, we're also seeing a lot of rents going up. And across the country, rents are going up quite a bit. What's the cash flow situation in both of your markets? Maybe, Andrew, I'll start with you. Is it the same as it once was before? Is it a lot less? Do we see it kind of balanced? What are we seeing from a cash flow perspective in Calgary, and then maybe in Edmonton, if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously interest rates across the board are making it a little bit more challenging, higher prices, higher interest rates. But like you mentioned, rents have also come up to help to meet that. With a lot of investors, we've been just focusing on creative strategies as well. So if you're looking at a property that has a long-term rental in it, again, Alberta is very open for business. There's few restrictions on short-term rentals. Okay, maybe we can switch over to have it a short-term rental, and then you're seeing a little bit more cash flow with that. So being a little bit creative with those strategies, and there's certainly lots of opportunities for cash flow.
Love it. How about you, James, in Edmonton?
Yeah, you know, before the interest rates went up, you could basically throw a dart at the map of the city of Edmonton and hit a property that would cash flow a few $100 a month. Like it was, the affordability index was just, that's what it was at. Now, in Edmonton, the interest rates increased before the rents started catching up. So we had about a 12-month lag where cash flow was break even, dare I say, a little bit tougher to come by. Now, the contrarian would say that's actually a good time to invest because the prices were still suppressed. So you could stock up on properties and then wait for the rents to catch up. That's what the smart money was doing. You know, a lot of investors were like, well, there's negative cash flow. I don't like it. I'm going to wait another year. Now that we're waiting another year, the rents have caught up to the interest rates. Things are starting to cash flow citywide again, but the prices are starting to creep. So, you know, I mean, it's like the old adage where do you want to be the first one on the dance floor or do you want to get out there once the party started? Well, the investors that are starting to flock to Edmonton right now are joining the party as opposed to starting the party.
Love it, love it, love it. And it comes into this question, Abdul, thanks for the question. And it's a good one and it's valid. And so his question is really, do you think that price growth will affect affordability in Calgary and Edmonton? So prices are going to go up. And we see affordability being impacted, obviously in Ontario. We're seeing affordability being impacted in Vancouver. What's your thoughts about affordability, and what's your perspective on that being an impact in the Alberta marketplace? Any thoughts? James, we'll start with you on this one.
You know, affordability is actually a measure of the ratio of the cost of housing to average incomes. So I think what a lot of people say is, oh, it's going to be less affordable. Well, it's going to be more expensive, but the affordability will be dictated by whether or not incomes are pacing. Now, right now, incomes in Alberta are coming up. Minimum wage is coming up. Prices are outpacing that. So the affordability index is getting crunched. There's no doubt about it. But when we take a countrywide perspective, it's still the most affordable place in the country that's a major urban center by a very wide margin. So while it's becoming relatively less affordable by Edmonton and Calgary standards, it's still widely more affordable than almost every other urban center. So I hope that helps answer that question because the affordability is still terrific, even if it's slightly less affordable.
Yep. Yeah. Good. How about you, Andrea?
Yeah, to add on that, I think in Calgary in particular, Calgary, you know, has some of the highest household incomes of the country. So matching that price growth with those incomes, you know, I think things are still very much affordable. And again, it's kind of, as I was saying previously as well, I think there is a lot of room for that growth because we didn't see it like a lot of the other markets did over previous years.
I'm going to add one more point to that topic, if I can hop in. To speak one more little Alberta perk about affordability is we have lower taxes. We don't have PST, we don't have HST. Our personal and provincial income tax is lower, our personal corporate taxes, or our corporate income tax is lower. So across the board, that same income goes a lot further in an after-tax scenario, which is part of the reason the affordability is so great, not only for owners, but also for renters.
Yeah, so good. And I'm glad you said the income side, Andrew, because that's bang on, right? Obviously, for those that don't necessarily know, the highest income in the country is in Alberta, believe it or not. It's the number one. And then as James's points reference, no provincial sales tax. You know, we've got prices that are extremely low from there's just so much more disposable income. So mark that down, disposable income in Alberta than most other cities and provinces. And for a lot of people that are moving in, they don't even realize that how big of a difference it is until they actually move in. They're just like, holy, look at this. Look at what I'm saving here. I'm parking a lot more money in my pocket than what I was at home. It's so much more than just home prices, which is why you're seeing this migration shift like we're seeing today. So.
Yeah, one anecdotal comment to disposable income being really high in the province. is a metric that I pay attention to, which is actually concerts. If you'll notice big names touring North America, they'll play double shows in big urban centers. You'll get a double show in Vancouver, you'll get a double show in Toronto. Pay attention to how many double shows end up happening in Edmonton, because there's so many people with so much affordable income that big concerts can fill an arena twice in one tour.
I learned something new today, James. Thank you for that. Concerts, who would have thought, right? That's a new one for me. So thank you for that. That's really good. Awesome stuff, guys. You guys are sharing some great stuff. Now, for all everybody that's watching this live, this is for you. So if you've got questions, here's your opportunity. You know, Andrea and James are just fantastic investors and realtors, and here's your opportunity to ask all the questions you want, specifically all about Alberta, because there's a lot of experience that is on this call today. So let me ask you guys, in regards to the different markets, both in Edmonton and Calgary, there's always these little distinct little markets or distinct little areas or communities within your own market. Is there one that's kind of sticking out more than the others that people may want to pay attention to? And I don't know if you guys want to disclose the ones maybe not so much, but again, there's a market for everything. Let's be honest. There really is. And trust me, I've invested in some of them too. And yeah, sometimes it's fun, sometimes not so much. But maybe within your own market itself, what are some of the most popular markets for investors, and what should they be kind of looking at in your specific market? So maybe Andrea, I'll start with you and then James.
Sure. Yeah, in Calgary in general, I'd say the inner city is finally starting to make sense again, which is really exciting to see. But Calgary is a lot of urban sprawl. It's a large city in terms of land mass. So it's been quite interesting as well to see some of the periphery growth and the actual demand that has been in those areas. And then surrounding Calgary and some of the smaller markets, Airdrie, Cochrane, Okotoks, those periphery towns and cities have really been following the Calgary market closely. And I've seen actually quite a few people that have been moving here and people that I've been working with who have wanted to be in those smaller places. There's been a lot of demand for that, to have that bit of that small town feel, but still be very close to the city. So I think those are interesting markets that are kind of surrounding Calgary to keep an eye on as well, because the rental demand and the prices follow the Calgary market quite closely.
Love it. Great, Andrea. James, how about yourself in Edmonton?
Well, you know, to build on your comment, Mike, just like any big city, there's a wide spectrum of everything from lower income areas to very, very high income areas. What I will say is that in Edmonton, I like to look at areas that the jobs will flow towards in terms of infrastructure, transportation, and like job centers. So, you know, a couple of the major job centers are that Atchison Industrial Park, Nisku Industrial Park, you know, stuff close to that's drivable, though that's going to be a really safe bet. And then in the inner city, one thing that's really popular is we are expanding our metro system, like the train, subway, LRT, whatever you like to call it. So being within reach of one of those stops is a really good economic driver as well. Oftentimes you'll hear anecdotally that being within 600 to 800 meters of a stop is really, really good for appreciation. Because of the weather patterns in Edmonton, I think you want to cut that walk down to about 400 meters. But, you know, it still holds true that if you can be close to transit, that's going to open accessibility to the city. It adds convenience and it adds value to the land in the area.
Yeah.
Very good stuff. Awesome. Yep. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's very similar. I mean, in a lot of ways, Calgary and Edmonton are similar in terms of some of the setup. In Calgary, finally, our ring road was just completed. The last section finally opened within the last month. But just like James said, along any of those transportation corridors are really great places for investors to focus, because as we see increased accessibility, we see more development, more businesses. So in Calgary, where that last section of the ring road just was completed, and we're going to see a lot of appreciation and positive things there. And as well, we're expanding our C-train line also in Calgary. So the green line, which is expected to run north to south, the first section of that has been approved and construction has started. So looking at properties kind of along that route to see exactly where you're going to be and to have that accessibility for transit.
I love it. Very good stuff. And guys, just so you guys know, for those that are investing from out of province, considering Alberta as a market, obviously you want to connect with your local investor-focused realtors because they know the areas better than anybody else. And so sometimes, you know, cheap price is a cheap price for a reason, but it's really important to really understand, you know, what type of property demographics are you looking for, or tenant demographics you're looking for your property, and making sure that you're finding the property and location that's going to fit specifically with that. So there's a couple questions that have popped up, of course. Multifamily investing. Now, it's one of everybody's favorite topics, mine included as well. For those that are watching live, who's into multifamily? Who wants to know about multifamily investing, and specifically in these markets? So let me ask you guys, what are you guys seeing in the multifamily space? Is there one strategy that's a little bit better than the other versus single family? And I've also got a comment from Mr. Nice Guy. Great name, Mr. Nice Guy. So what's going on with cap rate ranges within your market as well in Calgary and Edmonton? Up to 4 units. I'm going to say, well, when you're talking about multifamily, guys, just so you guys are well aware, again, multifamily is 4 up, but when we're referencing cap rates, but really regardless of the size, the cap rates are what the cap rates are as an average, as a benchmark or a number. So maybe I'll start with you, James, in regards to cap rates. What are you seeing for cap rates in the multifamily space? And secondly, from an opportunity perspective, is multifamily and single family, is there a difference in strategy that's sticking out as a better strategy to be focusing on than the other?
Yeah, I mean, cap rate range, there's going to be a wide range to answer that question at a glance, because brand new, really nice, high profile property in really good location that's got all the bells and whistles is going to be like 4-ish and below. And then older property in challenged locations that, maybe has a maintenance deficit, needs some work, needs some love, has a bit of a difficult tenant profile, can be pushing 7 and above pretty comfortably. So, to get more granular on what types of properties that fit your portfolio, we can talk about what cap rates exist for that property type. Now, to get into the question that you asked, Mike, about what's happening in the multifamily space, well, we've got a huge rush into purpose-built small multifamily. And when I say small, I mean 6 to 8 units in Edmonton right now. The city of Edmonton just went through a massive rezoning with huge chunks of the city to allow for more density in the urban center, in property that's closer to downtown. So now you can knock down a smaller house on a large lot and build an 8-unit building, and then layer on top of that commercial financing. Or if you're not the kind of person that likes the idea of the complexity and the risk of, doing that development, the finished product is widely available in the city right now. Either way, because of the affordability, because of the cost compared to the rent, there is a case to be made for using commercial financing, and even using the MLI Select program in a couple of use cases, which is something we are seeing quite a few of our clients taking advantage of. So that's really popular in the multifamily space in Edmonton right now. And I'd say that's one of the more common inquiries we get from out of province investors, because again, for the price of an old house in Vancouver, you can get an 8-unit brand new building in Edmonton.
Yeah, very good. Andrea, how about you?
Yeah, so Edmonton actually, interestingly, has been kind of ahead of Calgary in this regard to some of the zoning changes that has happened. But just recently in September, the city of Calgary had committee meetings regarding the housing and zoning and things like that in Calgary, because of course we're facing this housing crisis that a lot of people have been speaking about. And as I mentioned earlier, Calgary is just a large city in terms of landmass. There isn't a ton of density. There aren't, compared to other large cities in Canada, a lot of those bigger multifamily units and things like that. So one of the exciting things that is going to be happening in Calgary as well is changing of some of the zoning. So there's going to be blanket zoning that's supposed to be going into effect, which is going to permit for similar 8 kind of units to be permitted on 50 by 120 lots. So a lot of our inner city larger lots where there's homes, 1950s bungalows that a lot of investors are taking a look at as potential to maybe buy and hold. And as the zoning starts to change, then to redevelop and build these smaller multifamily 6 to 8 kind of unit buildings. Yeah.
Perfect. Very good. Mr. Nice Guy, I hope that answers your question. And hopefully, like I said, I think for more details, I think at the end of the day, you don't hesitate to reach out to any of these two wonderful people. So one of the questions, and I see a lot of my students from some of the different markets, and this is one that resonates in their heart. And so, guys, I'm going to ask you to pull out your crystal ball. You guys have it somewhere around there? Shine that up for a second. And I want to ask you guys about policy change. And so rent controls. I'm sure you guys have all heard about what's going on in Alberta, in Ontario in regards to major delays with the landlord tenancy branch and rent control. This is a common thing I hear all the time. Well, it's just a matter of time when Alberta gets rent control and all these stuff. And then the second part is short-term rentals. You see stuff that's going on in Vancouver and BC. It's just like, all of a sudden there's an impact there. In Alberta, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Or is there any common policy changes that you are hearing in that market? So maybe James, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, when it comes to things like rent controls, often when it makes it to the news, what you'll see is a couple of disgruntled tenants complaining about wanting rent control in a Facebook discussion group, and then the local news outlet picks it up, and it makes the news cycle for a little bit. But at the policy creation level, there's not really an appetite for it in Alberta at this time. And in terms of restricting short-term rental, the restrictions we've seen is that a lot of condo boards will restrict short-term rental in specific condo buildings, but nothing compared to what we're seeing in BC with like these owner-occupied requirements, et cetera, et cetera. You can in Edmonton just buy a house and rent that out as short-term rental with your business license, and you're good to go. Is there rumblings and an appetite around changing that? Again, if every so often it makes it into the news cycle that, oh, they're doing it in BC. What if Alberta's next? If it bleeds, it leads. But being connected to various levels of government just through who I connect with, I don't see an appetite for it.
Very good. Andrea, how about you in Calgary?
Yeah, I agree. I think there would have to be a pretty significant shift in our government. I mean, with the current Conservative government, again, Alberta's been open for business, and I think there would be pushback if some of those policies were in place. I think it's interesting, as I was chatting about the committee meetings with the City of Calgary and their housing strategy that took place in the fall. The meetings actually ended up taking place over 2 days. I think they had about over hundreds of speakers, because anyone from the public could come to express concerns or, put in their input. So it was really interesting to see, of course, there's concerns about affordability and things like that from local Calgarians. And so that plays into effect of some of those things. Okay, is rent control, should that be considered, or should there be regulations on more short-term rentals? But I think the overall view still has been that positive for not having those things, and with the municipal legislation and government as well from the province-wide government. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree that, and we're seeing the same thing too. Again, but just like anything, keep your finger on the pulse, stay close to policies that are being referenced by government. But from my perspective, it's been pretty quiet, other than some of the Facebook groups, specifically with tenants bitching and complaining. Oops, did I say that? Complaining about renting and creating some rent control. So great stuff, guys. Thank you very much. So we're kind of coming to the top of the hour here, and I always like to ask this question from each of you and like to get your perspective on it. You guys have been in the business for a long time, and you are real estate investors, you're realtors, and you're also very, very focused from an investor perspective. There's a lot of people that are interested in Alberta. Lots of talk. I hear it every single day. I'm interested. For some people, they may be a little bit nervous about investing in a different province. But maybe your final takeaways or thoughts for people that are, number one, considering Alberta, and also looking at how to invest in a different market when they're in a different province. So maybe you can just share some insight. What have you seen from your previous clients, and what's worked for them, and also just some key highlights on Alberta just in general. Andrea, I'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I think now is the time to get in. And the biggest thing is just building your team. So making sure that you are working with local experts, like you were mentioning previously, Michael, and you have your team of your realtor who's investor focused, mortgage brokers, contractors, and we can certainly help with that with recommendations and referrals, because of course it can be challenging when you're not physically here in province, you're investing from far away. Our team offers, again, property management, so that's a big piece for a lot of investors, is finding that support as well.
Love it. James, how about you?
Yeah, we provide the same kind of connectivity here in Edmonton. I mean, you're managing a physical asset that's going to need physical maintenance, as well as customer relationships with your tenants that live in that physical asset. And so if you're not the one to do that management, you're going to need some help. And making sure that you are taking the time to get to know the people who are in the local marketplace that can help. That's super important. And that's what Andrea will do for everybody in Calgary. That's what we'll do here in Edmonton, is just help you build that right group of people that'll help you manage your asset. That's critical, because at the end of the day, you want peace of mind. You can't just go drive by the place. But I'll tell you, I've been in the business of helping out of province investors buy in Alberta for over a decade. And once the initial nerves of not being able to drive by the property wear off, it's actually nice that you don't have the ability to drive by the property, because it actually creates a degree of separation between you and that investment.
Okay.
And once you can trust your team, then it's not like every time you're in that part of town you just like neurotically drive by, and if the tenants are a little bit messy, it grinds your gears. Like, you get to take a deep breath and not worry about that stuff, and just know that your team's taking care of it. And it becomes much more of a numbers game. You're in the business of real estate because you're looking at your P&Ls, watching your bank account fluctuate and grow. And it's a nice thing.
I agree. I'm going to flip the script a little bit in regards to, from the responsibility of the investor like us. What's your expectations of us as people that are considering that market? Is there anything specifically that you would like to make your job a little bit easier? So maybe I'll start with James and I'll conclude it with Andrea.
That's a wonderful question. I mean, take the time to ask all of the questions you need to feel comfortable, and understand that, we answer these questions every day as professionals in our marketplace. So we love answering these questions. That's what we do. So don't leave a stone unturned. Don't leave a question unasked, because if you're feeling a little bit shy about asking a question, or you feel like you don't have all of the information, you're not going to feel as comfortable with your investment decision. And that's not a nice feeling. We're here to make those questions feel answered, and we're here to help you understand the market perspective and ultimately help you pick something that fits your portfolio. Ask questions that are personal to you, instead of a question like, what's the best neighborhood in Edmonton to invest? Well, there's no right answer to that question, because different investors have different risk profiles, different time horizons, different exit strategies. So make that conversation with myself and Andrea about exactly what you want your ownership experience to look like as an investor, so that we can provide suggestions on what neighborhood, what property type, what tenant profile makes sense for you.
Perfect. Andrea, how about you?
Yeah, James, that's great. I totally agree. I think identifying that tenant profile is a big piece of it.
Yeah.
What kind of tenant profile you're targeting. It makes it easier for us to kind of be able to then talk about some different areas and strategy as well. I think, of course, ask us all the questions, but make sure you are doing some due diligence of your own as well. I think that's very, very important. And there are a lot of great resources out there, like the Savvy Investor program. Talk to other investors that are in the area, use the resources that are available to you. There's lots of great people willing to share information. So I think that's a big piece, making sure that you're doing that due diligence as well.
So good. Great stuff, guys. Very, very well done. Just amazing. I'm seeing some of the comments, really appreciating everything that you guys are throwing out there. So with that being said, we're going to wrap it up for tonight's session. But of course, just like anything, if people want to get a chance to connect with both of you two, what's the best place to connect? Like, I'm sure you've piqued a lot of people's interest. People are moving in. They're probably looking on MLS right now, or realtor.ca. So look what I can get for $300,000 in Edmonton. Look what James is right. So if they wanted to connect with you, so maybe Andrea, I'll start with you. What's the best way to connect with you if they're interested in learning about properties in Calgary?
Yeah, probably through email or our website would be best. We do a lot of one-on-one strategic meetings. So after this point, if Calgary's piqued your interest, we'd love to sit down and schedule one of those meetings to kind of dive more into strategy and what would work best for you as an individual. So
great. And James, how about you, sir?
Yeah, exact same thing for us. And we do those strategic meetings. We'll hop on Zoom. We'll do the screen share. We'll click around the map of the city, show you what's what. I'm assuming that, Mike, in the comments or the comment section or the description, you're going to put all the contact info. One thing to be mindful of.
Just ruined that for me. I was going to say that.
Oh, shucks. I wasn't trying to take your thunder.
All good. I'm just joking.
When you are exploring the Mogul website, we do have a section called Market Intelligence that has a bunch of research resources and an interactive map of the city where you can click around the city neighborhood by neighborhood to access a description of what the investor profile for that neighborhood is. So if you're feeling a little shy and just want to lurk before you reach out to book a meeting, that's a resource where you can do some of that self-study before you sit down with me or someone on my team to go deep into the city.
You call it lurking. I call it creeping, but that's okay. We're all fun. We're having fun with that. So that's good. I'm just joking. Creep them. So guys, just so you guys know, exactly like James says, I've already put the information in the description of the YouTube video. And just to rest assured, both of these companies, both Phipps Real Estate Group and also Mogul Realty Group, are Savvy Investor Trusted Partners. They have been vetted by our team. So those that are looking for good quality real estate investor realtors, feel confident in bringing them on. So guys, I can't thank you enough. Really great information, lots. And I'm sure we could talk all day, but Andrea's got to take off. So, but really can't thank you guys enough for being part of this. And hopefully we can have you guys back on the show again, if you don't mind. So
would love to.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Very, very good. So as we kind of conclude, guys, I want to also thank you guys all for joining us live. And for those that are watching the recorded training session, please post your questions in there. We'll make sure that we get our questions answered for you guys one way or another. And again, just as we conclude the final session, if you haven't done so already, please do me a small little favor. Subscribe to our Savvy Investor channel to keep you informed of upcoming videos that are planned for the future as well. So again, thank you guys all for joining us. I look forward to seeing you at our next upcoming live training session. Cheers.